Faith is one of those words people throw around as if it's simply a nice idea, vague optimism, or an inner sense of hope. But real faith, the kind that transforms lives and produces tangible results, is not belief alone. It is belief backed by action. Faith without works is like a seed that never goes into the soil. It might have all the potential in the world, but until it's planted, nurtured, and acted upon, it produces nothing. And here lies the difference between people who talk about faith and people who walk in faith. One is waiting for things to change. The other is moving in alignment with what they believe, creating the change. If you say you believe something, but you never act as though it's true, then what you have is not faith, it's a wish. And there's a psychological reason for this. The human brain is designed to reinforce behavior with belief. If you truly believe in something, your actions will reflect it. If you believe a stove is hot, you won't touch it. If you believe a bridge is safe, you'll walk across it. If you believe your future can be greater than your present, you'll start making decisions today that reflect that expectation. So when someone claims to have faith, but their actions remain the same, what they really reveal is that their belief has not gone deep enough to affect their behavior. True faith is not passive, it is active. It is not waiting for proof to arrive before you move. It is moving in anticipation of the proof. Think about it when you plant a seed, you don't see the harvest the next day, but you water it, you nurture it, you tend to it because you believe it's growing underground. That's how faith operates. You take steps before the results show up because you know results will follow. And this is why many people remain stuck. They confuse having faith with thinking about faith. But thought alone doesn't shift reality. Action does. Now, some people hesitate here because they fear stepping out and being wrong. They'd rather stay comfortable and say, well, I'm just waiting for the right moment, the right sign, the right confirmation. But that hesitation is nothing more than fear disguised as wisdom. Real faith understands that certainty comes after obedience, not before. When you act in faith, you create the conditions for clarity. You move first, and then the evidence follows. Waiting for perfect clarity is the opposite of faith. It is control. Philosophically, faith bridges the gap between what is and what could be. It is the engine that turns potential into reality. Belief sits in the realm of ideas. Faith pulls those ideas into the realm of experience through action. If you say you believe you were created with purpose, then you should live each day with intentionality, seeking opportunities to contribute, to grow, to build. If you say you believe in abundance, then scarcity should not dictate your decisions. If you say you believe that God or life or the universe is more for you, then the way you carry yourself, the risks you take, the discipline you apply should match that conviction. Look at every great breakthrough in history. The people who changed the world did not sit back waiting for conditions to be perfect. They believed something deeply and then they acted on it, often against all odds. That's why their faith worked. It wasn't just a concept, it was a catalyst. And the same principle applies to you. The life you want will not come simply because you believe it's possible. It will come because you act daily as if it's already unfolding, and that action attracts resources, relationships, and opportunities that waiting never could. The deeper truth here is that faith is not proven in what you say, it is proven in what you do. When your belief and your behavior are aligned, you create momentum. That momentum compounds, and over time, it reshapes your reality. When your belief and your behavior are misaligned, you create frustration. You say you want something, but your actions contradict it, and that inner conflict keeps you stuck. So the invitation is simple, but not easy. Stop treating faith like a feeling and start treating it like a verb. Faith is demonstrated in how you move, how you risk, how you invest, how you respond when obstacles show up. It's revealed in the habits you build, the sacrifices you're willing to make, and the consistency with which you pursue the vision you claim to believe in. If you want to put your faith to work, you cannot sit back and wait. You must step forward and act. That action is the proof that you believe what you say you believe. And as you act, your faith will grow, your results will multiply, and your life will shift in ways that words alone could never accomplish. So remember this, belief alone is cheap. Belief with action is priceless. It's time to stop wishing and start moving. Faith is not passive, it's power in motion. And the moment you move, you prove to yourself, to others, and to the world that your faith is real. Faith at its core is invisible, but when it's real, it produces visible outcomes. And one of the greatest misconceptions people hold is thinking that faith is strictly spiritual or strictly emotional. They think it belongs in prayer rooms, in meditation sessions, or in conversations about hope. But faith is much more practical than that. It is a tool for creating movement in your life, a force that turns unseen convictions into concrete results. And the truth is, if your faith never translates into daily action, then it will never translate into measurable outcomes. Now, here's where the challenge arises. Many people say they have faith, but when you look at their lives, there is no evidence of it. Their faith hasn't changed the way they spend, the way they speak, the way they respond to problems, or the way they pursue opportunities. And that tells us something profound. Unexpressed faith is dormant potential. It doesn't matter how powerful the seed is. It only matters if it gets planted, watered, and cultivated. Think about how your daily choices either confirm or deny what you claim to believe. If you say you have faith that your future is bigger than your present, but you spend all your resources on instant gratification, what does that reveal? If you say you believe you were created with purpose, but you keep shrinking back into fear every time opportunity knocks, what are you really practicing? Because faith is not just what you confess with your mouth, it is what you validate with your movement. Psychologically, this is rooted in the principle of cognitive alignment. When your beliefs and your actions are congruent, you create momentum. You feel confidence because you see your own behavior proving your conviction. But when your actions contradict your beliefs, you create internal conflict. You doubt yourself, you hesitate, and you begin to dilute your own faith. And that's why so many people feel stuck. Not because they lack faith in theory, but because they lack faith in practice. The powerful thing about faith is that it doesn't just activate when conditions are ideal. It's not faith if you're waiting for everything to line up. Real faith moves in uncertainty. It moves when the bank account is low, when the path isn't clear, when the outcome isn't guaranteed, because the act of moving forward despite uncertainty is the very thing that opens doors that hesitation would keep closed. Opportunities are often invisible to the hesitant, but they become visible to the person in motion. Now let's get even deeper. Faith is not only about action, it's about consistency. Taking one step and quitting when the results don't appear immediately isn't faith. That's doubt disguised as effort. Real faith keeps showing up, keeps investing, keeps building, because it knows that results often lag behind action. Farmers don't plant seeds and then abandon the field after a week. They trust the process, they work the soil, they water daily, because they understand growth is happening even when they can't see it. And that's how your faith must operate in your finances, your business, your relationships, and your purpose. You keep showing up with disciplined action, even when the visible outcome hasn't yet appeared, because you know faith is not proven in the instant, it's proven in the process. Philosophically, faith teaches that reality bends to persistence. The world does not yield its treasures to those who casually wish for them. It yields them to those who move with conviction, even when the evidence seems thin. When you live this way, your life becomes a living testimony that faith works, not because you say it does, but because your results confirm it. I'll give you a simple but profound perspective. If someone followed you around for 30 days and watched everything you did, your spending habits, your work ethic, your conversations, your risks, your commitments, would they conclude you were living by faith, or would they conclude you were living by fear? That's a hard question, but it's the one that matters, because faith is visible through patterns. Faith doesn't just talk, it testifies through behavior. And here's the empowering part. You don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to begin. You don't have to wait until you feel ready, until you have the money, until you have the full plan. Faith takes the step with what you have, where you are, trusting that more will be provided as you move. And when you move, things shift, doors open, resources show up, people appear. But none of that happens while you sit in silence claiming belief but refusing to act. So the call is simple: if you believe, then behave like you believe. Align your movement with your mouth. Align your daily disciplines with your declarations. Because once your faith is expressed through consistent action, you'll realize that the invisible has always been waiting to manifest, but it was waiting for you to make the first move. When it comes to faith, most people see it as a belief system, but they miss the dimension of expectation. Faith is not just believing that something is possible. It's expecting it to happen and living as though it already has. That's the difference between a wish and a conviction. A wish looks forward with hope but no demand. A conviction moves as though the outcome is already guaranteed. And that shift in posture changes everything about how you show up in life. Think about this: if you truly expect a harvest, you will plant differently. You will water differently. You will protect that seed differently. But if you're just wishing, you'll toss a seed in the dirt and check back a few times before giving up. Expectation transforms behavior. And this is where many people undermine themselves. They say they believe, but they live with no expectation. They pray for opportunities, but then walk around unprepared to receive them. They ask for increase, but never set up the structures to manage it. They want promotion, but haven't developed the skills to sustain it. Expectation is the bridge that connects what you believe in your heart to what you prepare for with your hands. There's also a psychological reality at play here. Your brain filters the world through what you expect. If you expect failure, your brain will highlight obstacles, dangers, and reasons why it won't work. If you expect increase, your brain will filter for opportunities, solutions, and possibilities. This is not mystical, it's neurological. It's called the reticular activating system. It scans for what aligns with your dominant expectation. That's why two people can look at the same circumstance and one sees a dead end while the other sees an open door. The difference is not the situation, it's the expectation they carried into it. Now let's go deeper. Expectation is not passive, it's active preparation. Imagine someone who says they expect to win a race but refuses to train, refuses to stretch, refuses to prepare their body. Do they really expect to win? Of course not. Their words and their behavior betray them. Real expectation prepares in advance. If you expect clients, you build systems to serve them. If you expect wealth, you learn how to manage and multiply it. If you expect growth, you develop the disciplines to handle the weight of it. Faith without expectation is incomplete, but expectation without preparation is self-deception. The two must operate together if you want results. Here's where the philosophy of faith becomes practical. You will always rise to the level of your preparation, not your proclamation. Saying, "I believe," is not enough. Expectation makes you set the table even before the meal arrives. Expectation makes you build the barn before the rain comes. Expectation makes you practice the speech before the stage is offered. It's living in alignment with a future reality as though it's already yours. And when you do that, you send a signal not just to your mind, but to the world around you that you're ready for what's coming. This is why so many people remain stuck. They're waiting for evidence before they prepare. They want to see proof before they build. But faith-driven expectation flips the script. It says, "I will prepare first, and the evidence will come later." That mindset is what separates those who wish from those who walk in abundance. The farmer doesn't wait for rain before he plows. He plows because he expects rain will come. The business builder doesn't wait for customers before he creates the product. He creates because he expects demand will show up. Expectation changes not just what you see, it changes what you do. But here's the hard truth. Expectation will also expose your doubt, because when you prepare halfway, when you procrastinate, when you hesitate, it reveals that deep down you don't really expect much. That's why so many people pray small prayers and dream small dreams. They don't expect God or life to do much for them, so they play safe. But if you ever raise your level of expectation, your whole life shifts. You start making bigger moves, you start stretching your capacity, you start aligning your actions with the greater future you anticipate. And here's the beauty. You'll be shocked at how often your reality begins to match the size of your expectation. Philosophically, expectation is a declaration of identity. You don't prepare for something you don't believe belongs to you. When you live with expectation, you're saying, I am the kind of person who deserves this outcome. And that identity fuels confidence, persistence, and resilience. Even when setbacks come, you keep preparing because your expectation says the result is inevitable. So let me ask you this, what are you really expecting? Not what you're saying with your lips, but what your preparation reveals. If I looked at your life right now, would your habits, your systems, your daily moves show me that you expect increase, or would they show me you're bracing for scarcity? That question cuts deep because expectation always leaves evidence. And here's the challenge I want to leave you with. Stop living in wishful thinking and start living in faithful expectation. Don't just say you believe. Prepare as though what you believe is already on its way. Because expectation creates space for manifestation. When you put your faith to work, you cannot overlook the role of persistence. Faith is not just about believing once and then sitting back, waiting for everything to unfold effortlessly. It is about believing, acting, and continuing to act even when the results are not immediate. Too many people confuse a delay with a denial, and they abandon their efforts right before the breakthrough. But persistence, grounded in faith, means you keep pressing forward because you trust that what you are moving toward is not just possible, it is inevitable. Think of it like planting a seed. When you bury that seed in the ground, nothing seems to happen at first. You water it, you wait, you protect the soil from weeds, and still, the surface looks unchanged. But something is happening underneath, roots are forming, foundations are being laid. If you dig up the seed too soon because you don't see growth, you kill the process. Persistence is choosing to stay the course, to keep watering, to keep tending, even when your eyes see no evidence of progress. That is faith in action, and that's the kind of faith that produces results. Psychologically, persistence is tied to resilience. Life has a way of testing your commitment. Obstacles arise, setbacks come, doors close, and resistance shows up. Many interpret these as signs that they should stop. But the reality is resistance often appears not to block you, but to build you. The challenge isn't meant to say, this isn't for you. It's meant to prepare you to strengthen your character, to test whether you are willing to endure for what you claim to believe in. Faith without persistence collapses at the first sign of difficulty. But faith with persistence uses difficulty as fuel to push forward. Philosophically, persistence is the practice of aligning your present actions with your future reality. If you believe something belongs to you, you will not quit when it doesn't show up immediately. You will not allow temporary circumstances to dictate eternal truths. That's the difference between those who live in frustration and those who live in fulfillment. The frustrated person sees every obstacle as a stop sign. The fulfilled person sees obstacles as detours, adjustments, sometimes even training grounds, but never as the final word. There's also a spiritual depth here. Faith without works is dead, but works without persistence are ineffective. Imagine a farmer who plows for one day, then decides it's too hard and walks away. The ground doesn't yield to one day of effort. It yields to consistent, repeated action. The same is true in business, in relationships, in personal growth, in spiritual development. It is not the one-time burst of effort that brings the harvest. It's the ongoing commitment, the refusal to quit, the daily actions stacked on top of one another until momentum takes over. Let's be real, persistence doesn't feel glamorous. It's not always inspiring. Some days it feels tedious, unexciting, even discouraging. But this is where faith carries you. Faith reminds you why you started. Faith gives meaning to the repetition. Faith helps you see that the small actions done consistently are not meaningless. They're compounding. They're building something greater than you can see in the moment. And if you trust that process long enough, you eventually reach a point where persistence turns into breakthrough. One of the biggest lies people believe is that success is supposed to come quickly if it's meant to be, but nothing worthwhile works that way. Marriage requires persistence. Raising children requires persistence. Building a business requires persistence. Growing in wisdom requires persistence. Even your spiritual journey requires persistence. If you quit every time it gets uncomfortable, you'll never see the fullness of what your faith could produce. And let's talk about timing, because this is where persistence gets tested the most. Timing rarely aligns with our preferences. We want instant results, instant validation, instant gratification. But faith teaches us patience. Persistence allows us to hold on in the gap between planting and harvesting. And here's the truth, sometimes the longer it takes, the deeper the roots are growing, the stronger the foundation being laid, the greater the reward on the other side. When you understand that, you stop resenting the delay and start respecting the process. Persistence is also contagious. When you keep showing up, when you keep pushing forward despite resistance, you inspire others. Your consistency becomes a testimony to the power of faith in motion. People watch how you endure and realize they too can keep going. That's why your persistence is not just about you. It's about the ripple effect your faith has on those connected to you. But let me make this clear, persistence is not stubbornness. Stubbornness is doing the same thing without reflection, without adaptation, without learning. Persistence is faith-driven consistency, but is also wisdom-driven adjustment. You may need to change strategies. You may need to grow your skills. You may need to shift direction, but you never abandon the vision. That's the essence of persistence. Holding fast to the destination even if you have to take a different path to get there. So if you feel stuck, if you feel like the results aren't showing, if you feel like you've been faithful but nothing is moving, let me remind you, don't quit. Because what you're believing for might already be in motion, but persistence is the only thing that will carry you long enough to see it manifest.